Hi, y'all. I want to thank everybody that subscribed. I really appreciate that. The more of you that subscribe, the more encouraging it is to me. Thank you for leaving comments. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave comments at the bottom of this one. I want to confine myself for the purposes of this video, since I went way over earlier in my previous attempt, to just a few topics. The first of which is the wand. I thought it appropriate that we start here. As far as a history is concerned, what is the history of the wand and why do we use one? Certainly it's more than for misdirection. A long time ago he told me he would say this prior to some lectures. I think he thought magicians might be able to appreciate a little more than laymen. But he would gesture to the wand and he'd say, legend has it that Aaron, brother to Moses, one day in a fit of anger, cast his staff to the ground, where it shattered into 1,000 pieces. He'd hold the wand up and he'd gesture and he'd say, this wand was carved from one of those pieces. I added something because I couldn't just let it sit there. It was a little too heavy for me, and I'm not Cellini. So I added, at least that's what the man who gave it to me told me. And then you get a little bit of blow off of that tension you may have just created. Cellini used that tension. I can't. Anyway, that is one aspect, and it leads right into the sprout on the wand. If you look on all the tarot cards, at least the A.E. Waite deck, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think that's it. I'm not sure. Any of the wands, they're basically four. It's the same thing as a deck of cards. There's four categories. The wand would be corresponding to clubs in the deck of cards. The reason being that club looks a lot like the sprouts coming out of the stick on the wand, on the staffs. They call them wands, but they look like staffs. And that comes from a Jewish, I guess it's written in the Torah somewhere. But when Moses and Aaron had led everybody out of the land of Egypt, they were on their way to the promised land. They found themselves in the desert. And God told Moses, look, I want you to gather the 12 tribes together, all the leaders, and I'm going to decide which one of the families, which one of the tribes is going to lead you by being the rabbis, by being the teachers. And so all of the leaders took their staffs. Every old man had a staff, I guess, in those days, and certainly every leader did. It was symbolic of their leadership role in the different tribes. And they put them all in a tent. To make a tent just for this. So they put them all in a tent and left them overnight. And when they came back in the morning, one of the staffs had a sprout of green leaves coming out of the side of it, signifying that it had a spark of life in it. And that was Aaron's staff, or there's a saying, Aaron's rod. And the staff and the rod are in a couple of prayers, Christian and Jewish prayers. But the difference being a staff is for leadership, a rod is for measurement. And the wand corresponds more to a rod, which has two ends. As above, so it shall be below. In 25 years, I guess I have taken about 2 years off from street performing. I did so non-consecutively. I took them off because I was burnt out. I was really tired of traveling all the time. And one of those years, I worked for a man named Jim Lee. He owned a business called the Hummers. And most conveniently, it was in the cabin where I lived. I mean, the canyon where I lived, my family and I. And so I went to work for him, and I came to find out he had a huge wood shop, lathes and bandsaws, but he was trained by the German guildsmen. He grew up in Germany, and did his apprenticeship and became a guildsman, a woodworker, German style, I guess. But he told me that all the guildsmen, once they became a guildsman, they were awarded a rod. And it was a measurement rod. In the old days, you would take it into an apartment, and instead of a tape measure, you would use it to measure along the walls and measure precisely from the doors or the windows or whatever. And that would tell you where the pipes ran for the gas. It would tell you where the studs were. It would tell you, we're talking about 12-inch centers, I guess, because they were 12 inches long. And tell you where all the plumbing went, and etc. Conveniently enough for us, it was made out of ebony, all these rods, and they were capped with ivory. And I think to this day, that's where we get ebony and ivory wands from. I think it's a holdover from Great Britain. Somebody ought to look at maybe some of those old sticks. I'm going to talk about leadership, I guess, for the time being. That's certainly an aspect of stopping people. One story that I think exemplifies it is sharing in the privations of your audience. And that brought to mind a story about Joey Joey. Joey in his day in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, was one of the finest performers, jugglers you'd want to see. He had a finale that was just incredible. But the first time I saw him was at a festival in Europe, and it was 1995. And this festival was situated next to this lake, and it's a very deep lake, a very big lake, and it was fed by glaciers, so the average water temperature is somewhere in the low 40s, maybe 40. But the water it's like ice water. You can't swim in it. I can't swim in it. I tried. On the side of the bank of this lake is beautiful park, and in this park the festival took place. Well, there was a big pitch, and it was the first night of the festival, and it was really when just performers were just arriving. The vendors were still setting up, but there were people milling about, other performers, some of the vendors, some of the general public to see the festival grounds. And Joey started a show. It was dark, it was late at night, it was incredibly cold, lower 40s at best. But somehow Joey had scraped together a crowd. And we're talking about, at that point, maybe 80 people, 70, 80 people standing around him. And he said, "Look, guys, I know everybody is really cold." And as he was saying this, he started to pull off his clothes, pull off his jacket, pull off his shirt. Underneath, he was wearing this wetsuit that had short sleeves and short shorts. It was all one piece. And he said, "But if you guys hang on just a minute, I got to go do something. But hang here for just a minute, and I'll be right back." And he ran off barefoot into the dark towards the lake. And in about a minute's time, emerged from the darkness back into the light, dripping wet. And I mean, his hair was soaked. He was soaked. He tied his hair back into a ponytail, and he said, "So I hope this makes you guys feel better." And then proceeded to go into the show. Just a great show. He had a wonderful show. But that immediately made everybody feel more comfortable. It didn't make it warmer, but it sure seemed warmer. That's what I mean about sharing in the privation. I mean, if your audience is standing in the sun, don't catch a corner of a building or a little tree or whatever and expect to have much of a good show, because you're taking up the most comfortable spot. You want to acknowledge what your audience is going through and assure them that you are experiencing the same thing. I guess that's one story. The other story, I'll try it. This is state of mind. If it's concerning that, if you're not in the right state of mind, like I said, you're not going to be able to stop people if you're not comfortable. And this is in 2006 or 2007, I think. I was in Los Angeles with Sonny Holiday, and he wanted to check it out. I was already going there, so he rode along with me from Las Vegas. We went out, and he didn't like any of the pitches. He didn't like Santa Monica. He didn't like Venice. He didn't like... took him to 4 or 5 different places. Anyway, the last one on the list was Hollywood Boulevard, because I should have probably taken him there first, but I didn't. Well, I was talking with some friends while he was working. Went back after, saw him after about 45 minutes. He said, you know, this is the quality of people here. I don't think you can get a crowd here. I said, no, Sonny, you can get a crowd. Believe me, you can get a crowd here. These are nice people. He said, no, I don't believe it. And I said, look, I mean, I didn't want to work because I was doing lectures at the time, but I did want to reassure him that you could do a show. Nobody else was doing a show at that point, so I said, I'll show you. And he said, okay, well, I'm going across the street and use the can. Get a slice of pizza. So took me about, I got set up, took me about 7-8 minutes to get a crowd, get, you know, the beginnings of a crowd. And he came back after about 15 minutes from the point of leaving, and I had at that point about 30 people in a nice semicircle around me, standing about 10 feet away from me, or 8 feet. And he stepped up in between me and them. He stepped up on the curb. My back was to the street. He stepped up on the curb, and he looked at the people, and he looked at me, and I looked at the people, and I looked at him, you know, as if to say, there you go, you know, see? And he said, you're wasting your time, Eric. This is a blank class of people. And he said it loud enough so everybody could hear. What do you do with that? I turned to everybody and I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is my uncle. If you'll give me a minute. And I took Sonny over to the wall. I said to Sonny, stay here. Just wait until I'm done with it. Let me finish the show, and otherwise we're going to get arrested or something. And he did. He complied. I finished the show and we were out of there. But the point being, if you're in a state of mind, drinking or mad or frustrated, there's not that much sense in trying. If you can put all of that stuff aside and get your head into the game, get a positive attitude about yourself and about those people that are surrounding you, then you can do a show. If you can't get those things together, then don't waste your time. There's no sense in it. Okay, well, I guess that's it. I hope to... This is a steep learning curve. I'm trying to learn how to edit these things and maybe insert some pictures, some little bit of music intro. Hope this starts to take on a little more polished look that I can be more proud of. But for the time being, I hope the content is enough to keep you guys coming back. Like I said, if you will, subscribe. If you will like it, those two things keep me going. Thank you very much. See you up the road. Ciao, ciao.